the wind right here in a jar. Have the rain on tap at the bar. I got the sunshine on the shelf. Allow me to introduce myself. Stoner Story Witch.
We all just want to gather around a glowing orb at night and have someone tell us a story. So sorry I love TV, but we've been doing this for millennia.
Hello and welcome to the Stoner Story Witch podcast. I am Kristyn. This is episode 1 of season 2 on Severance, where I'm going to have a friendly chat with my best friend, Jamie. And we are going to be talking about Severance, which is streaming on Apple. And season 1 was in 2022. Season 2 is coming out in January of 2025. And the name of today's episode is Severance and Disorganized Attachment. And for those of you who have maybe listened to the podcast before, you understand that there is a larger picture of my creative process and kind of a lot of metaphors that are going along in this process. And I want to just say that if you are here to just listen to Severance and Disorganized Attachment themes, then I'm going to just let you know that you can look in the show notes at the specific timestamps. But what I will say is this episode is going to be roughly sandwiched, if you will, in between kind of some friendly chit chat and a little bit of just kind of chatting about sourdough and full and new moons with Jamie in the first 20 to 30 minutes. We start at about the 20-minute mark explaining why Severance is the show for this season. And then we really jump into just the actual disorganized attachment, secure attachment, the types of severance that we see within this show, which then really illustrates how disorganized attachment is so prevalent in this show. And then we kind of end with just kind of identifying what some of the themes are that we will be exploring throughout the rest of the season. And then at about an hour and 25 minutes until the very end, it's just kind of more friendly gabbing and talking more about sourdough and all of that. So you can kind of choose what do you consent to listen to. Do you want to just listen to two best friends just gabbing? Because I know sometimes I do. I invite you to listen into that. And if you're I don't even know you, I'm here for the Severance, that makes so much sense to me that I am telling you right now how you can just skip ahead and listen to what it is exactly you want to listen to. And I hope it goes without saying that there could be some spoilers to season 1 of Severance. So if you have not watched that show and you are at all interested in watching it, I invite you to take a pause on listening to this episode, lest we spoil it for you. Take care of yourself, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, I want to just take a moment, though, to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And just say that, yeah, just how am I feeling in this moment? And it feels like a big deal. You are my first official guest on the podcast that I am recording in different countries. And so I'm a little bit proud of it. I'm also a little bit there's an extra layer of anxiety. There's that extra layer of tech. And I also acknowledge that you are a very near and dear person to me, and wanting to make sure that I'm attending to you as well as the goal of the podcast. And so just it just feels like there's a lot that I'm present with, and also just very excited to be here because it feels like it's such a long time in the making to have you here.
It does.
But yeah, how are you arriving? in this moment?
I um I feel pretty calm. Like I think I thought I might be a little more nervous, but I've had like a slow morning with my coffee and breakfast. I have a mildly disgruntled cat who we may hear at some point. She's not happy that she can't be on my lap right now. So I'm
Mm.
tracking that. But otherwise, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
All right, awesome. Um, what's going on in your kitchen right now, Jamie?
Oh, um, so I did my first sourdough. I started last night. I was actually going to tell you about it because I like came out this morning very excited to see how much it had raised, and it had actually shrunk.
Oh God.
Reason being because my house is very cold. The temperature in my kitchen was 61 degrees. So working on that. Put on the space heater and we're getting it up to 65, so like it might just ferment till tomorrow. I have no idea.
Okay. But
Yes.
you are in the process of making your very first ever
Yes, very first ever, I believe, sourdough.
sourdough.
Yes.
And it was and like it feel I want to make sure we're like giving it some airtime because we know that sourdough is a big part of the podcast at this point. And I had nothing, but I didn't have anything to do with like this particular synchronicity. Like it,
Yeah.
you just like you want to just tell a little bit about just what that experience up until this point has been for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely followed Ruben, Carmen Spaniola's husband, who has a blog, The Small and Delicious Life, and he just posted his like laziest possible sourdough recipe, as he likes to call it, or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Which I'm a big fan of that ethos because like who's got time for this? Nobody has time for
Mm-hmm.
this. So I want the laziest possible recipe, and it just kind of happened to coincide also with my boss at work makes sourdough, and he had offered to give me some sourdough, and we were sort of talking about this Reuben's recipe, and anyway, it just kind of like um, very serendipitously worked out that I got the sourdough starter this past week, like shortly after the recipe was posted. And then I started it last night because I knew I would need to start it the Friday night before a weekend. And like it just turns out that that's when we're doing the podcast as well. Sound check Friday night, starting my sourdough Friday night, and then like the real deal is happening on Saturday. So
I know. And I pretty much always have sourdough proving on my
yeah,
counter in one way or another. And so it's just like,
yes.
oh my God, like we are like, same, same.
So in sync.
Yeah. So I just was like, you just mentioned that in passing yesterday. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Of course you are. Of course you are. Because of course sourdough would be like, yoo-hoo, I'm here too, baby. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like that just feels so amazing. And yeah, my sourdough update is yeah, we're looking. I've like connected with a couple other bakers around here, and we are like this week gonna kind of do our first like like we're gonna try to up bulk up our production as much as possible and
Oh,
donate it to like the teachers at the local school to just kind of like give
oh,
them
I
a
love
little.
that. I love that.
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit like, oh, I've been like kind of sharing out my sourdough, like, with my friends and then like my like immediate neighbors in my like, neighborhood. And then now it's just like, okay, now we're like giving this like away in a really big. So that feels, yeah, like upping the capacity and asking people to help and
Yeah.
like all that stuff that is like, yeah, just um is hard for me. It's like it's
Yes.
something I have to learn as a,
It's a practice.
it is a practice. It is a practice. Yeah. Our conversation here is literally embedded in a conversation that my partner Kevin and I are having that is also in the process of
Hmm.
being recorded for the podcast. And I'm not and I was just sitting in the question of like which one would we like which one am I gonna even like, which one goes first, like which like is there even an order of events? I don't even necessarily like, there is no right or wrong, but like a decision does need to be made. And so I think I just want to open with just the question of, considering that the next lunation is a new moon in Scorpio, and then like the following new lunation is a full moon in Taurus.
Mhm.
And I mean, you're like a little bit of, I am not at all asking you to like be an astrologer, but like you like know enough to be dangerous, and just
I
like,
do.
can we proceed as though there's like some intentionality between which one? And so then like I don't have to flip a coin. Like
Yes.
it just seems more
Yes.
fun.
I'm having one thought now, which is that um like a thing doing something with you and Kevin is perhaps more a fourth house event than a 10th house
Mm,
event. Um,
true.
but on the other hand, like a new moon in the 10th house feels like a good starting point for like, the start of a new season, a new public venture.
Well,
Um,
so yeah, it almost does kind of make it seem like maybe this episode is more than new moon and Scorpio, because it really is like relating to a lot of the like just like the the capital W work that I'm putting into the world. And like in this
yeah.
season really is about severance, but then like this full moon in Taurus being at the bottom of my chart in my fourth house, and
Yes.
it's in Kevin's house of other people's shit. You know.
Yes. Okay, I'm loving this.
So
Great.
I think, yeah, maybe you'll be the next one, but I just want to say that like it's just so funny because I mean since Kevin and I just even started dating, like there's always been like kind of this like playful like, you are also my partner. Like we've never
Yeah.
had a romantic or sexual relationship, but you have like
Yes.
been very much a partner of mine in so many other ways.
Yes.
So like the ways that, you and Kevin are similar, or you and Kevin are different, and you're both being Taurus sun, and it just like felt very, it also just like felt kind of like, of course I would be um recording this episode with you in the mid, like literally sandwiched between me recording with Kevin. And of course there would
Yeah.
then just be like some quality of like, well, which one, like which one do I do first?
What do I choose?
Yeah, which just reminds me of my little like download that I had before the full moon in Aries podcast, where it was just like the 5 P's that came to me, like the process, promises, pleasure, purpose, and polyamory.
Mm.
And yeah, that like it's okay to just naming that, like the process of this podcast, like this is the first season where I don't have like, I don't know how many episodes this season on
Mm.
Severance is going to be. I've emailed friends, I've emailed like teachers and kind of like expert, like people that I'm like, I want to have a conversation about anti-capitalism and the wealth wound with. I'm feeling like shy to say the names of the people that I've emailed unless I've like confirmed that they're coming.
Yep.
But anyway, the only one that I've received back yet a response was Carmen willing to talk about attachment. So I don't know. You could come on the podcast 5 more times over the course of the next 2 months, or maybe just
Yeah.
twice, or maybe not at all. Like, but yeah, it just feels I just want to name that like the pleasure is coming into that. It's just I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, and
Yes, me too.
I just enjoy that it's just feeling into like, this feels like it's a conversation I'm ready to have, and it feels like it's in alignment with the purpose, and I'm not like beholden to any one process that like, well,
Yeah.
but it has to be this. If there's a couple weeks in between talking about severance, because then I do something else, like, because again, we're just doing it for us. We're just doing it
Yeah.
for funsies. Why I'm having you on the podcast, I guess we could have maybe started with this, but the reason I have invited you to be on the podcast is probably that I've in one way or another, been asking you to be on a podcast with me for the last, would you say it's been 3 years, 4 years? Like that
Yeah,
I've just
yeah, like three, you probably know better than me, but three-ish, three or so. Yeah.
three or so years that I've had this vision or dream of like getting together and like recording a conversation with an intention, and didn't really know what that would look like. And that you and I have been like besties for a really long time. We connected first in like third grade, and then we like went to different schools for a while, and then like middle school through high school, and then like college separately, and then we lived together for a year or two then in our 20s, and then yeah, now we live in separate countries. But
Mhm.
um I just was like, yeah, I want to just like tune in a second, that like it just feels, you just feel so very important to me, and knowing like all these different versions of who I am, and been like kind of able to like help me track like events of my life,
Mhm.
um and it just, yeah. And I think also there is something very technical and very like logical about like somebody that I really know and really trust to be like the first person that I'm like inviting onto the podcast to like ask some questions. um and yeah, so I think there's a lot of reasons why. um but yeah, I would say that the role that I would consider you to play at this moment in time is that you are one of my creativity doulas. You are a fountain of resourcing for me personally. And the Stoner Story Witch podcast is very personally creative for me. And so like it would literally be impossible for me to be like having the somatic capacity to like put something really what feels very vulnerable and personal into the world without some like lots and lots of, yeah, companioning. And you've been such a big part of that for me. And then also you are a big influence on me in that you are a prolific reader of books and newsletters, and you often run ideas by me that are things that I hadn't yet come across. Uh and the Severance is actually one of those
Mhm.
things. And so before we drop into Severance more, I guess, would you like to clarify like kind of what your experience of your role in my creative process, or this podcast has been up until this point? And or maybe also like, why are you here today? Or put even differently, like, what is the role that you wish to have or consent to have in this season with me?
Sure. Um, I do think that I feel that I've just kind of been along for the ride in a lot of ways, seeing how this podcast went from, like you said, over the last few years, just kind of it started as just a spark of an idea in your head, or like even before that, like even before you knew like the thing was a podcast. You kind of just you knew you wanted something and you followed your intuition on that and have really come a long way. And so to just like see it here in real life is really cool. And I'm really proud of you. And I think also, at the early stages of that, I think you somewhat to what you alluded to, like you were looking for perhaps like partnership in a project, or like maybe you had some fear about kind of going it alone, or um yeah, like wanting something to do it with you. And I think it's been interesting to see how, like, I would say that maybe I helped to encourage you on this in some ways, to like you actually like this is your thing. Like this is not my thing that I'm doing with you. It's like this is your thing, but I'm here to support you. I'm here to like be a part of it. And you have a bunch of other people in your life now that are supporting you in this. And um anyway, I just think it's cool to see how it's evolved for you over time. And I would say, like, I would say I'm just here because I love talking about stories and I I love my shows. I am an unabashed lover of TV and I mean, among other forms of media, but I really identify with the anecdote about how we all just want to gather around a glowing orb at night and have someone tell us a story. So sorry I love TV, but we've been doing this for millennia, you know? And I think if anything is missing in sort of the current day iteration of that is just the connection surrounding the stories, the human connections. And so I think that's the work of the Stoner Story Witch, and that's why I'm here. And also I'm just I am here because I want to have a conversation with my friend. And
Mm.
that's probably the overarching thing for me. I think even if no one else ever listens to this, we will have some documentation of our friendship and
Mm.
our love of these things. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's why I'm here.
Oh my God. I feel so seen in your that's the work of the Stoner Story, which is uncoupling from the social what I heard you kind of say is sorry, I like TV, but we've been doing this for millennia where we just want to sit down and watch and engage with stories around a golden orb of it was a
Yeah.
fire and now it's a screen and
Yes.
it's but there's that there is this there's this something that is there's this yearning for connection and community and for me I think liberation, just the human experience, just
Hmm.
connecting in a shared awe, which I think I'll probably get to in a
Yes.
second.
Yeah.
Um, and 100%, I just want to have a conversation with my friend. And it's so, okay. And I guess that's just another thing that I'm just right now thinking through, to just contextualize what our friendship has looked like over these last, of these 3 years that I've really been
Sure.
more. Um, we talk pretty much every weekend for
Yeah.
about 2 hours on average. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's 3 even. um, and we've been doing that for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And
Probably.
if you had to just guess how the percentage of those minutes that would basically be about you know, attachment stuff, relating it to stories, cracks in the wall of liberation, connecting everything in the entire world to Hades Town. Um, what percentage of those minutes do you think was essentially just a the Stoner Story Witch podcast that wasn't yet being recorded?
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna go with well over half, maybe.
That's actually literally what I would say. I'd be I can't discernibly
50-50.
say. Yeah, I was I think it's at least 51%. It would win the popular vote for
Yeah.
sure. Um, yeah, yeah, if you had pretty fucked up about Carroll College. Anyway, we'll digress there. Yeah, and so I don't know. It feels. I think for me, it feels grounding to just be we've been doing this for a while, and
Yeah.
now we just have some fancy equipment and
Yeah.
an intention to put it out there. So thank you for joining. You invited me. You even insisted that I watch Severance. This was last spring that I was in the process of editing the Little Women season. And you were like, oh my gosh, I just finished Severance. It was so good. You should watch it. Um, and I guess we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that when I originally felt called to do a season on Little Women, I was still in this mindset of wanting you to kind of co-host or kind of co-create this podcast with me.
Yeah.
And if you remember, I had wanted us to send voice memos to each other, okay, I'll watch it, I'll
Yeah.
send you voice memos. But it was pretty quickly evident that there was that there was a mismatch between what my vision for the process was, what your desire and capacity for that process was.
Yeah.
And we now can see that season one was a one-woman show, and in hindsight, I really do feel like it went exactly as it needed to, for me to
Yeah.
get the clarity that I needed, and that I can see enough about myself to be like, there would have been too many cooks in the kitchen without that clarity, that I could have just been like, wait, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, and now we're stuck in indecision and nothing's happening. And it was as I was in this process and I was like trudging through like the editing of season one, and then you're inviting me into watching Severance, and pretty effortlessly we were actually engaging in that process that I had wanted for Little Women, but
Mm.
applying it in this story. Because we started like just effortlessly sending each other voice memos about
Yeah.
Severance. We'd watch an episode and then I'd press record. Um, and even from the get-go, like that just indicated that like this story is one that really mattered to you and that you mattered to me. And then over time realizing that the story also mattered to me too. So and I think I want to speak to also, and you kind of mentioned it, to just reorient ourselves to what is attachment. And
Mhm.
that literally us being here talking about a story, I think like we are engaging in building attachment with one another. And I want to just remind everyone, if they didn't listen to episodes 1 and 2 of season one, that we build secure attachment with these building blocks that is Carmen Spaniolo refers to it as contact nutrition. And one aspect of contact nutrition is having a shared rhythm. And
Mhm.
that there's something to like actually watching a show with someone, whether it's like on the couch with them, or you are watching Severance where you are and I'm watching Severance with me and we're connecting via voice memos, but that it is a really profound way of building attachment.
For
and
sure.
and that I see that, like, you know when people recommend stories and books to me, I've started to see that as them making a bid for connection, a bid to be building secure attachment with me. And it feels very intimate and it feels very vulnerable when you really see it through that lens.
Mhm.
And that I feel like there's a little bit lost in our ability to connect with one another through stories when there's just so much, that when there's is like this consuming stories as merely entertainment rather than kind of like an invitation or interaction with stories as guides, invitations to liberation. um I like reflecting that there have been times that I've been invited to watch a 2 hour long movie that somebody really recommended, and then I just ended up having a 5 minute conversation about like one of the funny parts, and then looking back and
Yeah.
thinking like, I don't feel any more connected to you or that I know you anymore. I also don't feel like the person maybe necessarily even like got me or saw me as for who I am, because it wasn't even clear to me in the first place why they recommended it to me.
Mhm.
Um, and that was not my experience with Severance, by the way.
Good.
I guess with all that being said, what was your reason behind your insistence that I watch Severance? Like, if you can, like, to the best of your memory, and also like hindsight is valuable. Like, looking back, why, like, what was calling you to be like, oh my gosh, Kristyn,
Yeah,
Severance?
I think so when I watched Severance, it was just one of those shows that I had read about and it's been on my list for a while and like I read some good reviews, etc. And I just know that when I first watched it, I it had been a long time or like maybe never since I had been just so completely taken in by a show. And I think that's due to a lot of like practical things, like the writing is incredible, the production value, the acting, like all of those things, just the concept. I love a dystopia. I watch a lot of dystopias. I read a lot of dystopias, because I think it's a great way to learn about the present world. But there's plenty of dystopias that like have not taken me in like Severance did. And I just found myself thinking about it all the time during my day at work and like relating it to other parts of my life. And I think I was just blown away also by its ability to, like, I was just hooked from the first moment of the first episode to the last moment of the last episode. So like there just is some magic behind it. But I think like the reason I needed you to watch it as well, it's a combination of like I thought you would enjoy it, of course, for various reasons, and also I think I kind of compare it to like the human impulse to like, it's like when you see a beautiful sunset, like your first instinct is like I have to find somebody to show this to. Like this is incredible. Or like when my cat does something cute and hilarious or whatever, it's like I just need to go get my partner from the other room and show him this because like I think I just knew I was in the presence of greatness like while I was watching Severance, and like greatness cannot be fully enjoyed alone. I think that is a very human thing. So
Mm.
that's what I was feeling, I think, when I needed you to watch Severance with me.
Right. Yeah. Like a little bit of that. Yeah. Definitely like that shared rhythm and experiencing awe is kind
Aw,
of
for
like
sure, yeah.
is like the secret sixth bit of contact nutrition, which is like if you're
Yeah.
like, you're kind of like bonding with anybody that you're standing next to when you're at
Yeah.
like the Grand Canyon or something like that is like, oh my God, like this is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, totally. Yeah, for this particular episode, I want us to talk to just kind of do a very brief kind of laying out the context and the setting of this story that takes place. Um, and then kind of give a little bit of a primer on secure attachment or just a review, I guess, of secure attachment, as well as kind of like the types of it, like or the different attachment styles or strategies. And I also just want to make an official announcement that I have reached out to my teacher and friend of the podcast, Carmen Spaniola, the host of the Numinous Network, and she has agreed to come on the show to specifically talk about the misuse and abuse of attachment in high demand groups, or put differently, disorganized attachment within cult settings. I really just want to have a little bit of like an introduction to drop in so that hopefully Carmen and I can have uh, a little bit of a deeper, more rich conversation that takes advantage of her expertise, because we have both taken her secure course, the art and subtle science of attachment, as well as her contact nutrition 101. I can't recommend either of those high enough. Like anybody who is mildly interested to check those out. Let's take a moment here to describe the setting and provide a little bit of background. So can you help me like lay the stage and set the scene of like the world of Severance?
All right. Severance is set in a very timeless place or period of time. We see a lot of sort of old references. A lot of the technology in the cars seem like maybe they're from the 80s, 90s. The houses, stuff like that. But there's also a lot of kind of mid-century design that happens, mostly at the workplace, I would say. So sort of calling back to that era, but then there's obviously a lot of futuristic stuff in just the whole process of severance, and kind of also just sort of how maybe robotic or kind of uncanny some people's behavior is, like even outside of the severed world. So anyway, it's kind of unnerving because you don't exactly know when it is, and it like could be right now almost, except for one minor thing, which is the severance process that doesn't currently exist.
Yeah, I think yeah, like that there's this I think you're really explaining it, that there is just kind of this like, are we now? Are we in the past? Are we in the future? In what way? Like is like there is, like you said, like this timeless quality.
Yeah.
And also that there's kind of like this middle America, I don't remember if they actually say like a city or a state where they are.
Yeah, I don't either. I was just thinking, I guess we should just explain maybe briefly for people who haven't watched, just like the process of severance, like Lumen, the
Right.
whole sitch. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Okay.
want me to take that over? I've
Yeah,
got
go
a little
ahead.
blurb here. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I will say that the town that Severance exists, the town that Severance takes place is like kind of like this big corporate town. So like there's like a
Yes.
huge corporation, and it's probably one of those situations where like every kid at the local public school has one, at least one of their parents that works at Lumen, kind of thing. And like that, it actually really feels familiar with my experience growing up. Like we lived in a suburb that was super close to like a huge global corporation's headquarters.
Yeah.
But this particular organization is called Lumen, and Lumen has created a microchip process that, when planted in the brain, will sever your memory based on your location. And so they're doing this severance process for workers of Lumen Industries so that employees who work on the severed floor essentially become a new person. And they refer to that as your innie. And your innie has no memory of the outside world of outside of that floor. Aside from, we do get the sense that they have some very like kind of basic school knowledge, or just kind of commonsensical type knowledge that like a kindergartner might know. Like they have a sense of like knowing what a tree is. They have an ability to name a US state. You don't even remember your own name. The season begins with the question, who are you? Which is the very first question that they ask people after the severance process, and they don't know their own name. Okay, so the 5 questions that they asked are, who are you? In which US state or territory were you born? Please name any US state or territory. And then they say, what is Mr. Egan's favorite breakfast? And what is or was the color of your mother's eyes? And we see this person who has just had the severance procedure done. They just like are waking up on a boardroom kind of like table by themselves in this room. And they don't know the answers to any of those questions aside from they're able to name a US state. She says Delaware. So maybe it takes place in Delaware. I don't know.
Yeah.
But doesn't remember where she's born. The fact that like she doesn't remember the color of her own mother's eyes. So it's like you have no memory of your primary attachment figures. We learn later that Mr. Egan is kind of this like, like strong man leader of the Lumen Industries, and that everybody who works at Lumen would be exposed to a certain level of lore about this man. And everybody knows that his favorite breakfast was like 3 raw eggs or something like that. But they have no short-term memory of that, no long-term memory. They have this vague sense of like, okay, I guess a couple of things. You're not like the entire world is only this like corporate floor. Like they know enough to know that there are trees and that there is a sun and that there is an outdoors and that they can't go there, that they don't get to go.
Yeah, I think it's like they have lost any sort of like personal information, maybe would be a way to say it.
Yeah. Like the world that Severance is happening in is the severance process itself is viewed as controversial. We see that there are social justice activists that are protesting the procedure, saying that you're creating like an entire class of subjugation, indentured servitude, this like enslaved group of people who have no way out, that they are enslaved to this life of servitude by their Audi. And but as viewers, we actually seem to be encouraged to sympathize with the main character, to see why it is that he chose a severed job. We see that he's grieving his wife's death, and that the controversy of severance and how it's wielded and weaponized against the people who undergo the procedure, that it's that the setting is one where the conversation and the blame of severance is being placed on the individuals that are committing to this procedure, rather than like the context that is creating a corporation that is even offering the procedure in the first place, or what might compel a person to want to undergo this extreme procedure. That just feels really relevant to share.
Yeah, I think there's a lack of curiosity about why people would undergo this, and just a lot of scorn perhaps for people who have undergone it. Yeah.
There's this no dinner party that they show, that there's like this world where it's like all these fads that, like it feels relatable, but it's just like taken a little bit to that extra step where it's like, you don't even need to eat. You can just have a no dinner party. It's like, that's absurd. We are animals. We have bodies. Of course we need to eat. And actually, one of the tenets of secure attachment, one of the building blocks, is ingestion behaviors, like eating and drinking. So there's actually this sense of like, see, we don't even need to eat. We can just come together and just have intellectual conversations around a table. That's just like, that is odd. Like, we are living in a weird world. And I think it's also like the ways to be like, in what ways is that actually happening? Like, in what ways is Severance actually what I would call like prophetic, like nonfiction of this present moment? Like, even though we don't have like the actual like microchips, like in what ways is the absurdity that we're seeing in Severance speaking to disconnections and severances that are actually happening in the present world?
And absurdity being a hallmark of collapse, as we've heard from Carmen Spaniola and other teachers, that anytime you're seeing that in the field and it's just kind of like, this just does not make sense. Like, what is happening? This is so weird. What is going on? Like, how can this be happening? The hallmark of collapse. And I think that is absolutely the state that the world of Severance is in.
Yeah. And you know what, now that you say that, let's kind of dive in a little bit then into, because I think, yes, 100% it's a hallmark of collapse. And don't worry, we are talking about that with Carmen. So if you're like, what are you talking about? Just you wait. We're just priming the pump. Yes, we will get there. But that also, like, that level of just like confusion and like what the fuck is going on is also a sense of like that there's this disorganized attachment. And I think there is a lot of disorganized attachment in collapse. So I think like they're two parts of the same conversation. But let's just, so that's the setting. This is just like right now, just the world of Severance. We're taking characters out of it for right now. Like, what is secure attachment? What is the opposite of severance? Is attachment, right? Is like being connected, or integration, connection, attachment seems to all be antonyms to severance. So secure attachment is the ability to engender in yourself and cultivate in someone else a sense of being safe, seen, secure, and soothed. And that when we say safe, we mean free from physical harm and psychological terror. Seen is that it's okay to be different and all parts of you are welcome. Secure is that there is consistency available to you, and that if harm is done, the harm will be repaired. There will be like an active, attempt at repair. And soothed is that you will be co-regulated with in a way that works. It's attunement. You have to land secure attachment within yourself. So you have secure attachment with yourself. You can also have secure attachment with somebody else. You can also experience secure attachment or pursue secure attachment with nature, with the outside world, with the more than human realm. People who, especially people who are like religious or have a spiritual practice, right? Like I am developing a secure attachment to sourdough. And I mean that wholeheartedly, very, very sincerely, very earnestly, that, like having a daily practice with something that is outside of myself and And there's a lot of shared rhythm. There's safe touch. There's ingestion behaviors. Like there is so much attachment that I'm doing in my sourdough practice. We can be pursuing secure attachment in a whole myriad of ways. And that, yeah, so in this world of severance, we see that there literally is a severance that people have from themselves. They are literally creating two separate versions of themselves that do not have any shared memories. There is no way that they can communicate with one another that isn't mediated somehow by their bosses or their supervisors that can totally milk it to make it, providing alternative narratives. And they don't have any recourse for like knowing that they're being lied to. Also, the innies like have no, like they have no knowledge of their life, their history. They don't know the things that matter to them. They're severed from even a true secure attachment with each other, that the people who work on the severed floor can't actually arrive or leave the severed floor at the same time. They stagger their comings and their goings. And that ultimately when a character does just leave, there is no like, this is where this person is going, this is what happened. It's just like kind of like he's gone and that's it. Even though, for this world of these innies, their entire world is shaped by the three people that they work with. They're a department of 4 people. So the 3 people that you've worked with for the last year, and that's your entire life, that's your entire memory. And one of those people just leaves, is just gone. And there's no explanation as to what or why. You don't even really understand what the world outside of the severed floor is. Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
And then later we see that there's a retirement that happens, and there actually is a little bit of a celebration. But then there's even like the acknowledgement that these innies have of, oh, when this person that we care for retires, they have like I have no legacy. Like they will not remember me. Like every day for the rest of my life, I am going to be mourning them. I'm going to be missing them, and they will have no recollection of who. Like my life is devoid of meaning because there's nobody to remember me. There's nobody to tell my story. It's like so sad. The existence of these.
It really makes you realize like how much of human just meaning in human lives is because of memory and history. And when that is gone, I often relate it to when I got a concussion in college, playing soccer, and just having that very short time period, call it 24 hours, where I like didn't remember small details of my life. And like luckily it's all come back. Nope, don't worry. But it was a really like terrifying and depressing time just to realize how much of the meaning in your life is because of memories, short term or long term, even. So,
yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That, yeah, like what? So you said it was terrifying. Wait, what was the word you said? Like,
yeah, I think I said terrifying or depressing.
Terrifying and depressing. That it was just like, oh my God, like what? Yeah, do you want to just say a little bit more about that? Because I'm glad you brought it up. I remember we brought this up at one point as we were watching back in the spring, but just like, I don't know, just like a couple, like 1 or 2 little like anecdotal experiences of that time and just the disorientation of it.
Yeah, so I got a concussion playing soccer, like had to go to the hospital, and so like they give you 3 words to remember to kind of check your memory every half hour or whatever it is. I still remember the words. They're green, wood, and bear. So apparently I'm fully healed, But anyway, so I would say over the next, say 24 hours, I didn't have to stay overnight at the hospital, but I came back to my dorm room, and I just remember walking into my dorm room and kind of having to like relearn where things were. Like, oh, I think I remember seeing a pair of shoes on the ground and being like, are those my shoes? Those look familiar. I think I had just recently bought them, so that's why they were unfamiliar. Or just like remembering where do I put all my papers for school, and like just kind of like relocating stuff like that. And it was just really scary to be like, am I like, what else do I not remember? Do I remember all of my like long-term family history, like my friends? Do I remember my habits, like what I like? It just reminds me even of the question in Severance that we were just talking about, like the big question of who are you? It was a question for me of like, who am I? And like I said, luckily it came back all within, I would say, about 24 hours, but in this temporary period of like having to relearn based exclusively on like external cues of like who I am. So,
Oh
yeah.
wow. So like even in like that like early recovery, there really was like a sense of like like are there people in my life that I don't that I like wouldn't be able to that like that you like knew enough to be asking the questions of like, wait, who am I? Do I
Yeah,
know
I
what do I
like
not
I
know about myself?
I don't even remember, funnily enough, I don't even remember the specific questions I was asking myself. It's like I kind of just have this general sense of like how scary it was to be that disoriented about my own life. So yeah, like I don't remember specifically if I was like, do I have other friends or like what those questions were. Um, but it was just very disorienting.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm curious, do you remember like if there was any particular thing that you found really resourcing in like that, like those, in, like, just, I mean, I recognize it was literally like a day or
Mm,
48 hours or something like that, but like,
yeah.
was there like a, okay, but I know I have, like, did you have like a thing that like helped kind of like center you or ground you or even maybe it was even like a
Yeah.
person or something? Like, who did you throw to kind of support you
Yeah.
with
So
accountability?
I don't remember like a thing or I don't remember details, but I do remember like the thing that I would say comes to mind is that the doctors had my friend who had like come with me to the ER, who was on my soccer team. My friend Hannah like stayed overnight with me in my dorm, and I remember they had asked her like she had to wake me up maybe like every couple hours to ask me the three words if I remembered them and to just kind of like check and see how I was doing. And I'm sure she like followed up with me the next day and like oh, and she even brought me to her grandparents' house that night for dinner with them. And so we had like a family dinner. Um and yeah, I think all of that was like incredibly resourcing and just felt so supportive. And like just to know that if something wasn't going right, like she was there to take care of it. Like I was in very good hands. So
Mm.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. You were not waking up on a table by yourself with a disembodied voice
Yes.
talking out, just asking you these questions and just like waiting for you to get more and more and more and more and more and more distressed.
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for yeah, and oh my gosh, yeah, like sharing that meal and like seeing
Yep.
her grandparent and be like, okay, you know me, you know what happened, like you
Yep.
remember me, and you're reminding me of like who I am and what happened to
Yeah.
me.
Oh, and the
Um,
funny thing too is I kept asking her, apparently I don't remember this. I kept asking her what had happened to me because I didn't remember. And so like probably a dozen times over the course of that night or whatever, she would explain to me what had happened to me on the soccer field. And then I would reply with like the same exact response every time. Like I was a broken record. So but that just kind of reminds me of like to have, that secure attachment or whatever, it's like those people are there to remind you of your past and to remind you of your memories and your history and just how that is like such a support that the people in Severance have absolutely none of.
they have none of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I even remember, I mean, this would have been after you were recovered because this was we weren't talking for like 3 hours every weekend when we were in college, but I remember you telling me, oh my gosh, I got concussed and I like had short-term
Yeah.
memory loss. And I remember you saying that you asked her this question, like, so what happened to me? And then she started telling you the story. And at the moment she said like you were kicked in the head, you
Yeah.
always interrupted her to say,
Yep.
oh, so that explains this, and like point
Yeah,
to
like
like
my
your
chin hurt or
eyebrow,
something.
like
Yeah,
yeah, or like
yeah.
did you have stitches in your face?
This
Or was this different?
that was a different incident actually,
Okay,
but
never mind.
this one is like I was kicked under the chin. So I think I had like a bruise on my chin or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I can just imagine that like that coherence or like
Yes.
it was like so settling. Like,
Yes.
oh God, okay, that explains why my face is all bruised and why eating is painful or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, even though it's like a bad thing that happened, it's like, okay, I just want to know like what's on. And so to just, yeah, like just how disorienting it would be to just like to never ever really recover from that, like
Yeah.
is just wild. And I have no, like, I don't have any sort of embodied experience with what it is to kind of have a severance with myself in terms of the short term memory loss or even like dementia or what have you. So like really scary stuff for sure.
Yeah.
um we talked about secure attachment is safe, seen, secure, and soothed. We know the different ways um that these people are severed from themselves, from their families, from, oh yeah, I think I was even going to say like, like there is severance between the severed people and the non-severed world. The way that like Lumen essentially benefits by the fact that severance is controversial because it evokes this social scorn. It makes it hard for outies to like even want to leave or like
Mm.
feel like like receive companioning, compassion, curiosity from like the larger world, because there's just like, oh my gosh, how
Yeah.
dare you get severance, or like, oh my God, like, why would you want to do that? It's not like a genuine curiosity. It's like you're asking the question, but it's really like like it's a non-starter. Like it's just dripping with judgment.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and just like a severance from like history. What is the larger context? Like, um, we know that Mark he was a history professor. So the main character, he was a history professor. And at this like no dinner party, we see that people like, and again, this is just the other thing that's just kind of bonkers. It's almost disorienting to watch it because there's just like this is weird. Like they're pretending to have this intellectual conversation, like this like intellectual elitism. But the conversation is, did you know that in World War One, they didn't call that the people living in World War One didn't call it World War One. They called it the Great War. Like, and then Mark is like, well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense because like they didn't know there was going to be like
Yeah.
they didn't have the context, like like the fact that like there's such a missing piece of empathy that like these like non-severed people can't even like fathom that like that there would be like this context that people living in a time period like wouldn't know the future.
Yeah.
And so and like so Mark has the ability to like see that historical context as an outie, but his innie like totally is missing. Like if his outie only knew what his innie knew, he would be able to be like, oh my gosh, like this is a problem. Like all the things that are happening on the severed floor is really problematic in all these ways because he has knowledge of a larger context that his innie doesn't have, you know.
Yeah.
That severance is existing in this world of disorganized attachment, that it is like this disorganized
Mm.
attachment by design. And so I think I wanted to just come up with some examples of moments from particularly the severed floor, but also it can be just in the larger world where we see this, in particular, disorganized moments that are getting in the way of these characters landing safeness, feeling seen, feeling that like consistent security and a sense of being soothed or attuned to. We're going to just go into a little bit of, I think, just pulling out a couple of receipts of like these moments that we've identified as, I mean, certainly we can't get all of them, but just some really potent moments of the disorganized field in the severed world. And I also am just sitting with this question just very tenderly because I just want to mention that in talking about attachment and especially disorganized attachment, it can actually like Carmen will say like invoke the muse, where it's just like you are feeling more like, or that there is potentially the invitation to like remember that there was a time that this happened for you, or and in general, I guess it just leads me into a bigger question of like, what does it look like to take care of ourselves as we're watching like really dystopian, disorganized like stories? Because I know we talked about this with like The Handmaid's. Like I didn't have the capacity to watch The Handmaid's Tale, especially like I had just had my second kid, and it was just like, excuse me, like I just can't with this right now.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely, I can't. So I think I just want to speak to that and just make sure that we're like, I will be shifting my weight a little bit side to side on my bum and just kind of noticing my back body. I wish I had a taller chair, but yeah, we're going to be invoking some just like some big stuff, some like pretty fucked up things that happen in this show, that yeah, that I just want to name. All right, so the question we're sitting with here is, what are what are some examples of this like disorganized field in Severance? Another, or we could even like maybe even say like this like weaponization of the people in the up power position, weaponizing their power over these these people, these innies, these people who have severed themselves and therefore kind of don't have any recourse. I can start us off with, I mean, we already mentioned it a little bit, but it really is this, and I think I will go into this a little bit more deeply with Carmen, I know, is the way that disorganized attachment, especially in high demand groups or like cults or whatever, are like, I am the expert on your lived experience. So literally the fact that these characters need to be told who they are, not just, you know, on that very first day where it's like, this is your name, because they literally don't even remember their name. So they're told their name. We even see them going into I have a whole set of questions for certain people about, for like some teachers and experts about the wellness sessions. But I will just say like the way that Lumen has the innies, these people who are severed, go to, they call it wellness, but it's, you know, it's therapy, I guess. What we could call it that.
Of a sort, yeah.
Of a sort. But even in these therapy settings, it's like the therapist is saying, like, for your enrichment today, I'm going to read you facts about your outie, and don't show any preference over one fact over any others. And it's like, you're not able to, like, there is like a sense of, oh, and then she takes away your points. Like points will be deducted from you if you seem to be favoring certain facts about your outie's life over another one, over other facts. And yeah, just the fact that the only information you're getting about who you are is coming from outside of yourself. So it's like they are purposefully keeping these innies from developing secure attachment within themselves, because it's like, no, like you will only be able to receive like a little bit of gratitude or pride about who you are, but on my terms. Like it has to be all the same, no preference, no one fact is better than anything else. That just seemed so fucked up.
Yes. Something that I think about a lot in Severance is the doublespeak and the language that is used, and like using words that actually mean good things to talk about bad things or vice versa. And I think just that level of confusion creates a really disorganized state. And I think along those lines, I also think about sort of harsh punishments being doled out with a smile and a gentle manner is very confusing. And it's like who can I trust? And like, wait, I could trust you. You were being nice 5 minutes ago, and actually, like, you're still being nice, but not. But actually, I'm being punished. Like, it's very disorienting.
Mhm.
So that's one thing I think about.
Yeah, thank you for naming that. That a lot of the way that, so like kind of like the direct supervisor of this department of four people is this man named Milchek. And he is like at the very early scenes we see with him, he is just like so nice, so expressive. He's got these like big happy eye, like it's just, oh my gosh, he seems really nice. And the main character, there's this new character that's kind of getting introduced, so we're being introduced to this world through her experience. And and then somebody kind of says to her, like, yeah, you gotta, yeah, he is really nice, but he can't always be nice like that.
Mhm.
And the way that that particular line is delivered is like, yeah, we got to stay on their good side because, they can't always be nice like that. And then later we, of course, see that Milchek can have this super strong, we'll just like say still face where it's like, I am
Yeah.
not giving you anything. And like just how, he is like the only person that's really like doting a lot of praise or preference or giving you little prizes or little like enrichment activities. They have like like little dance parties or a little melon bar or like all these like little corporate incentives that, yeah, what, just side note, like watching with my partner who is from the corporate world is like, this is really on point, like that there is actually like, and what it also reads, there are certain scenes where it's like, oh my gosh, he's acting like a pre-K teacher. Like he's almost communicating with these people as if they're toddlers,
Hmm.
in this like really infantilizing kind of way. And then it's like, ooh, that's a red flag. Like, why are we treating our kids this way? Like
Totally.
I just think it's like a worthy question to just be like, to just sit with. And I will just name that, yeah, I'm not a I'm not at all an expert on parenting. I am a parent. And I think that that will always be a question in any of this attachment stuff, to just be like, ooh, that smarts a little bit, thinking about like, in what ways would I be distancing myself from like readily offering praise to my kids in a particular situation because like, I'm upset about a thing, and I'm justified in being upset, but like there's a certain level of like just their own, like just seeing them for their humanity and that they're fucking kids, like they're
Hmm.
kids. And just the way that these innies are in a lot of ways kind of childlike in their naivete, that
Yeah.
they are so, I think that this is like another thing that we see is just how very carefully they are controlling what the innies are, and the outies for that matter, like the information that they get.
Hmm.
There is, we have to just mention that within Lumen there is this very like religious overtone. Like there's a huge theme of, there's Kier Egan that is almost like this Christ-like, definitely a cultic type leader. I mean, we don't actually ever see him, but the way people talk about him and revere him, there's like songs about him. We learn about, he has a handbook, and the way they talk about the handbook and quote the handbook, it's like in my prior like Christian days, it feels very like very, it's very biblical. It's like the Bible
Yeah.
says, but it's like the handbook says, thou shalt have no other books but the handbook, and,
Hmm.
and like just the idea that it's like you are only like, you can only do um what the handbook says of you, and that they're literally, they steal a book from somebody's Audi, trying to control what the Audis can consume. So just like the level of propaganda
Hmm.
and like the information that you can trust. Yeah, like not letting people make up their own minds or even like have access to the information to be able to like
Sure.
understand that there's alternate ways of thinking about things.
One other that's coming to mind is sort of the unpredictability of surveillance within Lumen. So, like, for example, they get out of their little, cubicle bubble and they start walking the hallways to like try and explore and see other people and find other things. And I actually think, like, even as a viewer, sometimes you're kind of like, well, why are the bosses letting them explore these hallways? Like, why don't they just like put them back in their office? They obviously don't want them to be doing this. Um, but at one point, Mrs. Cobell, the boss, says something about how I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like, the best way kind of to surveil people is to, or like you you have to give them some sort of freedom to let them think they have freedom
Right.
to really have control over them or something. Sorry for butchering it. But yeah, like there is some planned level of like, we are going to give you just enough so that you think you are free, but you are not. Like, we could clamp down at any moment. And like sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And I think that unpredictability is very disorganized.
For sure. It's made me think of like the slot machines too, like at casinos that are
Mm.
like, like purposefully like kind of, like if anyway. Um uh oh yeah. There's like one time when a character is like one of the innies is leaving like the boss's Miss Cobell's office, and he's like, shall I leave the door open or closed?
Yeah.
And she's like, both. It's like that right there. I mean, it's like it's over the top, dark, and just super dry. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like, I want you to know that no matter what, you're gonna fuck it up. Because it's like I
Hmm.
literally can't leave the door both open and closed.
Yeah.
Um, there also is, I mean, it is this disorganized field that the Audis are blamed or scorned for getting this severance procedure, and that they don't really have, like it doesn't seem like there's, at least we haven't seen that there is much community or compassion offered to them. And we also then see like that there is this like blaming the individual for systemic issues, I guess.
Mm. Yeah.
And or just like things that are truly outside of your control. So
Yeah.
um there is an instance where, one of the new recruits, so Helly, this new character that's coming in and is getting trained in, and um Mark, the main character, is like kind of supposed to be like, her team leader, and she kind of she really doesn't want to be trapped down in on the severed floor. And let's circle back to trapped because I would
Hmm.
just like, let's just or actually let's not, I'll just say that like she is trapped, she feels trapped, it is obvious that she feels trapped, that she is trapped. And yet in the outside world we learn that the word trapped is like a slur almost, and that like,
Mm.
the way that like, oh, you're not supposed to call him your worky, you're not supposed to call him, the way that there is that. And I guess I would just even say like that there is this outer disorganized world of even like cancel cult, like how cancel culture can create this disorganized field where it's like I can't even speak the truth of what's going on without somebody pretending like I am being offensive, or like, and like, okay, sure, somebody could be like, oh, that's offensive, or I'm offended. And it's like, okay, you're allowed to like feel your feelings. And also like, we can see that the innies are having this experience, but the fact that it's like the language is being policed on the outside is just
Mm.
creating this, like, we know this is true. We see this as true, but then like there's this other narrative that's being pushed that, like there's the like the PR person for Lumen is just, like doing this whole like whataboutism, like you're claiming that you care about these people and yet you're using words like trapped and worky, and it's just like you are tone policing me so that we're not going to have this very meaningful conversation. And I just want to
Yeah.
name how prevalent that actually is in the real world. Like
Yeah.
that it's like this is not fiction.
That's also reminding me, I guess, adjacently of one of my favorite lines of Severance, and I think probably one of yours as well, is that so it's something like every time you come back here, you are choosing it or something like that.
Right.
And
Every time you come back here, it's because you've chosen to be here, or you've chosen
yes,
to come back.
yes. And it's kind of like this relates to the double speak a little bit, I think, but it's kind of just like these thought-stopping cliches, right? Like you are fed these lines and you just have to kind of take them as fact. And you can't probe into the idea that like, well, am I really choosing it? Like in what context am I choosing this and under what pressure? And um I guess I'm not really landing my thought here, but I think that it's like part of the disorganized state is that like you're being fed these words that like kind of make sense, but don't actually if you probe into them whatsoever.
Well, right. And just the fact that it's like the choices are limited. Like we have no good
Yeah.
choices. And I think that
Yes.
this is, this is like a thing I know Carmen has said, and maybe I can try to remember to speak to it when she comes on the show, but that like there are no good choices in late stage capitalism at the end of the
Yeah.
empire and peak oil and all these. It's like we only have trade-offs. It's like
Yeah.
and
Totally.
and so to just be blamed for like, well, this choice you're making is not taking into account XYZ, and it's
Hmm.
like there's no,
It's not possible.
it's not possible. Like there are some better choices in certain things, and also we only have like 3 hours of brain glucose in any given day to even like have the capacity to really like weigh out these choices.
Yeah.
So it's just like, am I going to be wasting my time trying to figure out like there's just too many things. There's too many wrongs in the world, and so to then be blaming individuals for like you're not buying organic or you're giving your kids screen time or whatever, like it's just like the oppression that is in like policing these choices when like there just are no good choices. And it's
Yeah. Yeah.
um but and so yeah, it's like, oh, you chose to be here. It's like providing peace, that it's like, okay, well, my Audi, I must be serving some bigger thing. Hopefully my Audi is having a really great life, and like, that I'm like
Hmm.
finding some meaning in that. And then that, I guess, now speaks to, I guess we can say that there is a moment where we actually see that there is some videos being sent back and forth from Helly, the recruit, that, like I said, is
Mm.
feeling trapped. And she sends a video, like she's desperate. She's like, I am going, like she is threatening self-harm. And she's like, I need to send a video to my Audi. I want to resign. I don't want to be here anymore. And she gets a video back. She comes back down she like leaves up the elevator and just comes back to consciousness and sees she has a different video, and she watches it and she sees her Audi just be like, this is unacceptable. You cannot do this. You don't get to
Mm.
choose. I am a human, or like I am a person and you are not, like,
Yeah.
um, and I guess that's like not even disorganized attachment. I mean, that is just abandonment. That is just severance. Like that,
Yeah.
like that
That's
is that
severance.
is
That's
that
severance
is
from yourself.
that is
Yeah.
total like severance from yourself. Um, and so yeah, so Helly is feeling trapped. She has this experience. She's like, oh my gosh, like I'm not even on my own side.
Yeah.
And she's angry. She doesn't want to do this. And she, it doesn't go well. And she then ends up hospitalized. And Mark, her supervisor, is blamed by Ms. Cobell, but he's like, you let this happen. You are responsible for what happened to Helly. And then later he's like, okay, I think I know what I'll do. And they end up taking her to this, like the propaganda wing, they call it the
Oh
perpetuity wing,
yeah.
but like it's like she needs to like have some more meaning. She needs to know that like the work we do matters. One of the characters really likes all the little perks and incentives, and the other one really is like just gung-ho about like the handbook and like
The
just
history of the company
the
and
history and the
the
lore of the
meaning.
company and the
Yes.
meaning. And so it's like, okay, like let's give her that. Let's like give, and it's like ridiculous, like the budget that the severed floor has for propaganda, but like it makes sense that these innies need some sort of sense of that, like their life is meaningful. And Mark even gets in trouble then, like, why are you going on this field trip, like it's not your job to be handmaiden to or nursemaid, I think, not handmaiden.
Mm.
It's not your job to play nursemaid to all the new recruits. And it's like, okay, you're blaming me when she's in the hospital, and then when I'm trying to like take
prevent
initiative and
that.
do something
Yeah.
to like make her feel more connected to something greater than like now I'm chastised. It's like you cannot do the right thing.
Yeah.
So that's disorganized. And even it's even interesting, like in this perpetuity wing, it just feels like there's a little bit of it because they don't know what they're doing. Their job is literally like they
Yeah.
look at numbers and they need to like group the numbers that feel scary and like put them in the garbage, like put them in the like in the trash bin, like on their
Yep.
desktop kind of thing. And like you said, it's like it feels like it's a really old computer. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
number munchers or
Yes,
something like
yes.
that for other like elder millennials that could get the reference. Um, and yeah, so it's like you're disconnected from what it is that you're doing, but then they have this wall of just like disembodied smiles. And it's like,
Mm.
look at all these smiles. We are making people smile. It's like, but why? Like, but literally, what are we doing? Are we like making, are we a dentist company? Are we like selling toothpaste? Like this, um, yeah, just like being in the dark of like, who are we and what are we even here for? Like, what is the purpose of this?
Yeah.
Just seems wild. I mean, I know there's more, and I think I just want to like, we could talk for 5 more hours about
For sure.
all of the
I
disorganized stuff, but I think that feels kind of like a good little
yeah.
smorgasbord intro. Yeah, I guess I also had a question of like the themes or morals of this story, and I think that like more can kind of come out, but um I would say like as I was watching this, themes that were coming up to me of obviously secure attachment or insecure like obviously the point of this podcast of this particular episode is certainly alive and well. There's also something to me about this embodiment. There is on the wall of the perpetuity wing, there is a quote that is like, history lives in you, whether you remember, whether you learn it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm sitting in the question of like, even though these people are like severed in their brains, in their memories, like what is actually still living in their body that they may not have consciousness of. And what I guess I mean by that is, so Ruben Anderson, the sourdough recipe that of course we will link to, um, he talks a lot about, one of the reasons why we don't have like why we can't have like the large scale behavior change that we need is just like our brains just only have so much capacity. And one of the things he says is that like our conscious brain can only really hold like just to compare, size. There's no way you can like measure like the volume of information, but like if we could say your conscious brain can hold the size of a bread box amount of
Mm.
information, but like our subconscious mind, things that we are like not conscious to, uh it would be like the size of the Milky Way galaxy.
Mm.
And that it's like we're really focused, like this severance to me is like the severance of like the bread box, like the things that you're conscious to. But I'm really sitting in the question of like what like what is still there, or what are like the similarities between like the innies and the outies, or maybe one is like the shadow side, or I think we will definitely talk about that in a later episode. um I also would say like weaponized wellness, which we sort of talked about a little bit, the wealth wound and solidarity, um, and yeah, and I think there is like that. There is the idea that an invitation to liberation can arrive in a flawed package. um, that there is like a cult of capitalism. There are themes, obviously, for me of Hadestown and liberation. Um, and I think when we go into more kind of character analyses, we've talked a lot about like death phobia is also kind of a thing that comes up,
Mm-hmm.
like a fear of death. Um, and then I also just want to like just put a pin in like Mark has a sister who has just like a really a lot husband, and then is also having like a really needy, a brother who's going through a lot of things, and then she also
Yeah.
is having a baby, and like she is just every single scene, even like the scene where she is like birthing her baby, she is like tending to the needs of men.
Yeah.
And I just have to name that. Okay. Any other themes that you want to speak to that are like a moral of the story or something like that? And we can add to it later, but
Um, the only other thing that's coming to mind, thinking about kind of how body keeps the score and that sort of thing, is like I do think a big theme of Severance is the idea that you can like sever yourself from grief and pain. I think this is kind of related to the death phobia stuff as well. And and just kind of the question of like, is it better to never have grief or pain? Or like kind of I think the answer is no. But that our culture maybe generally would answer yes to that. Like, of course, we want to get rid of grief and pain as much as possible. And if we could sever ourselves from that, like that's what we should do. And I think that question is a big theme of Severance for me.
yeah. Yeah, and that actually, yeah, that we we hear at one point Mark is reunited with a former coworker who was severed and has been reintegrated, and he's telling the outie Mark about his innie,
Mm,
and he's like, he says to him, "You carry the hurt with you. You feel it down there too. You just don't know what it is."
yes.
And how that, yes, 100%, like how that relates, like it's being held in the body, and just reiterating like how disorganizing that would be to just be like, oh my God, like what's going on? Like I'm
Mm,
having this experience in my body and I don't know what it is.
yeah.
Um, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. All right. So before we kind of like move to close, I want to pose to you the three questions, if I that the way that I can parse them out at this time. So again, the Stoner Story Witch podcast is kind of, for me, it's like it's three words that would, when put together, are answering three questions. And the questions being, how do you connect to your intuition or wildness? What archetypal energies or stories are guiding the pathway of your liberation? And what is resourcing you in your or for collective liberation?
All right. I would say cats are how I connect to my intuition slash wildness. I think I do a lot of cat sitting. And I also have a cat, and I think I am often in the practice of communicating with cats, communing with them, or just kind of discerning what it is that they need from me in any given moment. And so that is very much an intuitive practice for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the story that is guiding the pathway of my liberation at this moment is Circe, which is a book I'm actually reading for a book club, but it is Circe is a Greek goddess, I believe, a character from the Odyssey, which I
Mm-hmm.
have not read, and I'm like secretly not at all interested in Greek mythology. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Oh.
But this book has like made me very interested because it is a feminist retelling, sort of told from the perspective of Circe, who is otherwise characterized as like a crazy witch kind of thing who hates men, which we can see all the cracks in that. Um, and then what is resourcing me right now is my sourdough, which is just at the very, very beginning. But yeah, it just feels like something that I want to practice and have that the ability to make something like that for myself.
Yeah, yeah, like increasing your skillfulness to be
Yes.
self-sufficient, which
Yes.
just, yeah, which feels very like akin to some of your other, like you've done different like weaving and hide tanning, and I don't know, it
Yes.
feels kind of like
My
like
crafts.
your crafts and cookeries.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I will definitely make sure to, it's really funny, the sourdough thing, because I saw that Ruben had posted that like super easy recipe and I read it and I was like, it's amazing. I recommend if anybody opens it, to actually open it up on a desktop, because then you can kind of like see his footnotes a little bit easier. But it was funny reading through it, and my original thought was like, oh God, like, no, I don't like one of the things I really love about sourdough is some of the work that goes into it is that like over the span of a couple hours, like I come back to it and a friend of mine calls sourdough adult slime. It's like, I'm just playing in slime all day. But then to your point, like you said at the very beginning, like not everybody has that amount of time to just like, I'm going to be home for 5 hours and I'm going to time out exactly like the rise of all this, and that I am. And so it was just funny reading that and being like, well, this season of my life, I'm really enjoying the process of sourdough. Actually, like I'm actually enjoying that it's labor, like quote unquote labor intensive, or at least just not quote unquote lazy, like he would describe it. But what I really love is that he's like, I am trying to figure out like how to make it so easy, so foolproof, so accessible, because we are living in late stage capitalism. Like it is an immense privilege that I have to have the ability to make sourdough the way that I'm making it. And it's not lost on me that like time is a resource, and me choosing to spend so much of it to like play in adult slime and make bread. And so, yeah, I love that it's out there. And it just felt, it came, I think he published it the same week that I was really recognizing that like I called the last episode the manifesto, and realizing like, oh, this is the name of that poem. You mentioned Small and Delicious Life, which is his website. And it is like the phrase small and delicious life really is like a big part of kind of the world that I'm reaching towards. I hope to one day have Ruben on the podcast to talk about sourdough and the small and delicious life and collapse and all these things that we've just kind of touched on. And so that's why it just feels like, it just feels like you said, magical that you're embarking on this like sourdough thing. And I'm excited to see what happens, how it rises now to a space here. All right. I think that's it, Jamie. I think we did it.
We did it.
Hooray! How does it feel? How do you feel?
It feels good. I feel like I just had a great convo with my friend, which is what I was here for.
Yeah.
How about you?
I feel like I had a great convo with my friend. I feel like I think I have a little bit of my anxious attachment. Is like, did we get everything? Or like, but I'm like just leaning back in my chair and just like trusting that we had the conversation that the podcast wanted us to have. And thank you so much for coming. It has been
thank you for having me.
Having you. Yeah. I mean, I locate myself so much in Helly and her storyline. Yeah, that she is straddling these two worlds. One where she has like so much power, so much abundance, but like is so severed from attachment, from connection. We see a very brief scene of her with her father to see like just how, like I'll like put a pin in a lot of my opinions about that, but that for the first time ever, she's like, by this severance process, able to really have an embodied experience of solidarity with the working class, and that she is this person that is very much like the capitalist class, the owning class, the CEO, like the archetypal CEO. But there's this severance that like allows her this different embodiment. And then, we see that she has this moment of like, I'm going to speak out about this. And what I really am feeling in this liminal space between the two seasons is like, I want to collectively imagine like what we want Kelly's story to be. And it probably won't be what Apple is going to give us because just like Mr. Gatewood in Little Women, like there are when there's $20 million an episode, like there's just a lot of investment in like maybe not having it be an anti-capitalist message, let's say. Even though I subscribe to that stories are animist beings unto themselves, and that if we just like really look closely, like the story is there and we can track it. And so I'm sitting in this imagination of like knowing what happens to Petey when he tries to reintegrate, like what would a successful integration of Helly's innie and Helly's outie to a more liberated future for all the workers at Lumen or all the people in that community. I don't think I know I don't have the answers, but I just want to name that, like, because that I feel a lot of resonance with, I guess, like what it is to really be integrating that, like, I have so much, I have this much power and privilege. And also I can see how, by virtue of the fact that we're living in a world that has like these hierarchies of power, rank, and privilege, and what it is to feel in solidarity with people that are of different walks of life and therefore more disadvantaged by these oppressive systems. Like, what does my solidarity look like, and how do I integrate? How do I like navigate what it is to like hold those paradoxical identities? I want to just be really upfront and locate that, like, my why, like behind, like, it's not just, oh, Jamie wants to watch Severance, but it's like why me watching Severance was just like, oh my gosh, we're going to do this. Thank you so much for tuning into the Stoner Story Witch podcast. I hope that some part of this was thoughtful, interesting, resonant to you. Thank you so much to Jamie for coming on the show, for having a friendly chat with me that we could record and put out into the world. Thank you to Carmen Spaniola and her husband Ruben Anderson and his amazing sourdough recipe that I will make sure to put into the show notes as well. I'm looking forward to having Carmen on the podcast in the next couple weeks, months, something like that. We haven't yet figured out when we're going to record it, so it has not yet been recorded, but I'm really excited for the upcoming episodes of this season. And our next episode for the full moon in Taurus is going to be more of a personal dive into some relational dynamics between myself and my partner, my husband. That is going to be less of a heady conversation about Severance and like a critical analysis of the show, and more of what happens when we actually commune with stories as a crack in the wall of our own liberation rather than just consuming them as entertainment. So it really is, I think, more of a metabolizing of what this story means for me personally, and I'm offering it out into the world. So if you are the type of person that enjoys the show Couples Therapy, or I don't know, like any like reality TV show, I guess it's like a reality podcast, because it really is us pressing record on some pretty tender moments in our marriage. So if you just want to be a looky-loo into the trials and tribulations of someone else's marriage, I invite you to do so. Thank you so much for tuning in, and looking forward to chatting at you again soon. And also, if you are interested in attending the Roadmap for Liberation, I believe it is happening right now with Rev Angel Kyoto Williams, where she does the deep dive interviews into contemplative approach, embodied practice, prophetic praxis, collective process, and the liberatory path, which is so much of what this podcast is about. And every time I say liberation, it is informed in the time that I have spent with her in that group and on that road. So I highly recommend that if that is something that is of interest to you, that you check out the transformative change of the Roadmap to Liberation. And I will leave you with a quote from Rev Angel that says, "Love and justice are not two. Without inner change, there can be no outer change, and without collective change, no change matters.